DNA test revealed she's the secret daughter of a Russian mafia boss. Now she's key to peace, or war. You have exactly 3 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't put a bullet in your head right now. The cold metal of a gun barrel pressed against Victoria's temple as Mikhail Volkov's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Who sent you to infiltrate my family with this DNA nonsense? Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs, her professor's mind racing through survival scenarios. The genetic markers don't lie. Test me again if you want. I never asked to be your daughter. The pressure of the gun increased. 2 seconds. My mother's name was Irina Petrova. She worked at the National Library in 1991. She had a small birthmark shaped like a crescent moon behind her left ear. Victoria's voice trembled but held firm. Check your memories, Mikhail. You know I'm telling the truth. The gun lowered slowly as recognition flickered in the crime lord's eyes. Irina, he whispered, the name carrying decades of unspoken history. Have you ever wondered what secrets might lurk in your family history? How one revelation could rewrite your entire identity overnight? When linguistics professor Victoria Petrova opened her genetic ancestry results, she never expected to find herself linked to Russia's most feared criminal kingpin, or that this discovery would thrust her into the center of Moscow's deadliest mafia war. If you discovered your father was the most dangerous man in the country, what would you do? And how would you handle the knowledge that you now held the power to prevent, or ignite, a bloody mob war that could claim countless lives? If you want to discover how Victoria navigates this impossible situation, hit that like button and subscribe now for more incredible stories of life-changing revelations. The amber light of a Moscow sunset filtered through the windows of Victoria's small apartment as she stared at the email that would shatter the foundations of her carefully constructed life. At 32, the linguistics professor had built a respectable career at Moscow State University, her days filled with research, teaching, and the quiet certainty of knowing exactly who she was, until now. Genetic ancestry results, 50% Eastern European, 25% Northern Russian, 25% Georgian. That wasn't surprising. What made her hands tremble was the name that appeared under close genetic matches, Mikhail Volkov. Victoria's breath caught. Everyone in Russia knew that name, the notorious head of the Volkov Bratva, whose criminal empire stretched from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok. A man whose mere mention caused politicians to lower their voices and police officers to look away. A man who, according to this digital report, shared enough genetic markers with her to be her biological father. Impossible, she whispered, though even as the word left her lips, memories surfaced like bodies in a thawing river, her mother's evasiveness about her father's identity, the mysterious deposits that appeared in their bank account each year on Victoria's birthday, the way her mother would sometimes study her face with a mixture of love and apprehension. Her phone rang, jolting her from her thoughts. An unknown number with a Moscow area code. Professor Petrova. The male voice was deep, measured, confident. We need to discuss your recent discovery. A car is waiting downstairs. The line went dead before she could respond. Through her window, she spotted the black Mercedes idling at the curb, a broad-shouldered man in an impeccable suit standing beside it, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses despite the fading light. Victoria's hand shook as she grabbed her passport. The rational part of her brain screamed that entering a stranger's car was madness, but curiosity, that ancient human weakness, pulled her forward. She tucked her mother's worn photograph into her pocket, a talisman against whatever awaited her. As she approached the car, the scent of expensive leather and a faint trace of sandalwood cologne reached her. The driver opened the door without speaking, his movements precise and economical. The bulge beneath his tailored jacket left little doubt about the weapon concealed there. Where are we going? Victoria asked, sliding into the back seat. To meet your father, the driver replied, his voice devoid of emotion. The drive through Moscow felt surreal, familiar streets transformed into an alien landscape by the knowledge burning in her mind. They passed the golden domes of cathedrals and the stark lines of Soviet-era apartments, eventually turning through ornate gates into an estate on the city's outskirts. The mansion before her seemed to exist in a different Russia than the one she knew, a palace of old-world opulence that had somehow survived revolution, war, and the collapse of empires. Guards with military posture stood at strategic points throughout the manicured grounds, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Inside, the wealth became even more apparent. Victoria's academic mind absurdly catalogued the artwork lining the corridors: Repin, Ivazovsky, Kandinsky, millions in art displayed like family photos. The subtle scent of power hung in the air, a mixture of rare woods, old books, and the faint metallic hint of gun oil. "He's waiting in the study," the driver said, gesturing toward massive double doors of carved oak. Victoria's heart pounded as she entered. The room was lined with leather-bound books, their spines gleaming in the warm light of antique lamps. Behind a massive desk sat a man in his 60s, his silver hair cropped short, his face weathered but handsome, with piercing blue eyes that locked onto hers with unsettling intensity. Mikhail Volkov. The Voke. The Wolf of Moscow. Her father. He stood as she entered, his movements fluid despite his age. For a long moment, he simply studied her, his expression unreadable. "You have your mother's intelligence in your eyes," he said finally, his voice softer than she'd expected. "But the rest," he gestured vaguely toward her face, "that's all Volkov." "Is it true?" Victoria asked, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "The DNA doesn't lie." He gestured to a chair. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Victoria felt the command in his voice, the expectation of immediate obedience. She remained standing. "I want to know why," she said. "Why my mother never told me. Why you never acknowledged me." Something dangerous flickered in Mikhail's eyes, a flash of the predator beneath the civilized veneer. "Your mother's choice. Irina was principled. When she discovered who I truly was, she wanted no part of my world for herself or for you." A shadow crossed his face. "She allowed the financial support but refused everything else. Including my name. And you just accepted that? Abandoned your child?" Mikhail's hand slammed down on the desk, the sudden violence making Victoria flinch. "I respected her wishes," he growled. "It was the only thing she ever asked of me. And it kept you safe." He paused, regaining his composure. "Until now." "What's changed?" Mikhail pressed a button on his desk phone. "Anton, bring her in." The door opened again to admit a young woman approximately Victoria's age, exquisitely dressed in designer clothes that couldn't quite disguise the hardness in her eyes. Behind her came two men whose bulging jackets poorly concealed their weapons. "My daughter, Anastasia," Mikhail introduced. "My acknowledged heir." The women appraised each other, mirror images separated by circumstance, one raised in wealth and power, the other in modest academia. "So it's true," Anastasia said coldly, her voice carrying the refined accent of Swiss finishing schools. "Father's dirty little secret has finally emerged." "Enough, Nastia," Mikhail warned, using the diminutive like a verbal caress. "Your sister is our guest." "She is not my sister," Anastasia snapped, her manicured hand tightening around an invisible weapon. "And bringing her here now is madness." "The timing wasn't my choice," Mikhail replied, his tone suggesting the conversation was testing his patience. "The DNA database matching was unexpected. But perhaps fortuitous." Victoria looked between them, sensing currents of meaning flowing beneath their words. "I don't understand what's happening. Why am I here?" Mikhail sighed deeply, the sound of a man accustomed to bearing heavy burdens. "Because knowing about me has made you valuable. And dangerous." He turned to a television mounted on the wall and switched it on to display a news channel. 3 hours ago, this report aired on every major network. The screen showed grainy surveillance footage of an explosion, a luxury car erupting into flames on a city street. The caption read, "Attempted assassination of crime lord Mikhail Volkov's daughter." "The Baronov family has made their move," Mikhail continued, muting the volume. "They believe they killed Anastasia this afternoon." Victoria's academic mind connected the pieces with horrifying clarity. "But they didn't. They killed someone else." My body double, Anastasia confirmed with cold efficiency, not a hint of remorse in her voice. Standard procedure when tensions rise. The Baronoffs want war, and they thought killing me would provoke my father into a rash response. Which is exactly what they'll get, Mikhail added, as far as the world knows. Anastasia Volkova, dead. The Wolf of Moscow, howling for revenge. Meanwhile, Anastasia continued, running a perfectly manicured finger along the edge of her father's desk. I disappear, resurface in Dubai with new credentials, and direct our operations from safety while the Baronoffs face my father's wrath. A perfect plan, Mikhail agreed, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. Until you appeared. Victoria's throat tightened, the air in the room suddenly too thick to breathe. What do I have to do with any of this? Everything, Mikhail said softly, the word hanging between them like a death sentence. Because you, my unexpected daughter, are now the most valuable piece on the board. The Baronoffs don't know you exist. No one does. You're my secret weapon, or my greatest vulnerability. The smell of expensive cologne and leather couldn't mask the underlying scent of danger that permeated the room. Victoria felt it seeping into her clothes, her skin, her lungs. Father believes you could be the key to ending this conflict, Anastasia explained, her tone making clear her disagreement. A neutral party with Volkov blood. Someone who can negotiate with the Baronoffs without the baggage of our family's history. Or, Mikhail continued, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, if you refuse, you become a target once your existence becomes known. The Baronoffs would not hesitate to use you against me. Victoria felt dizzy with the implications. Yesterday, her biggest concern had been securing tenure. Today, she was caught in a blood feud between criminal empires. And if I want nothing to do with any of this, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. If I just want to return to my life? Mikhail's laugh was without humor, a harsh sound that echoed off the leather-bound books. That life ended the moment you opened that email, he said, not unkindly. I'm sorry, Victoria. Truly. But choices made decades ago have brought us to this moment, and now we must deal with the consequences. A terrible understanding dawned on her. You knew this would happen eventually. That's why you let my mother take me away, not to protect me from your enemies, but to create a contingency plan. Someone untainted by the family business who could step in if needed. Something flickered in Mikhail's eyes, pride, perhaps. Or regret. I never intended for this moment to come. I hoped you would live your entire life free from my shadow. But now that it has, Anastasia interjected, moving closer with the fluid grace of a predator, you have a choice to make, Professor. Help us end this war before it begins, or become another casualty in a conflict you never asked to join. Victoria looked between them, the father she never knew and the sister she never wanted, feeling the weight of invisible chains tightening around her. In the span of a single day, she had gained a family and lost her freedom. How long do I have to decide? Mikhail's gaze moved to the window, where darkness had fallen over Moscow, the city lights glittering like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The Baronoffs expect my retaliation by midnight tomorrow. After that, blood will flow in the streets of this city like it hasn't since the Soviet collapse. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, a warning, a lament, a harbinger of things to come. I need to think, Victoria said, her academic mind desperately trying to process the situation with logic rather than fear. Of course, Mikhail nodded. Anastasia will show you to your quarters. We'll speak again in the morning. As they left the study, Victoria felt his eyes on her back, calculating, measuring, assessing her worth in a game she didn't understand. The guest suite was larger than Victoria's entire apartment, decorated in tasteful luxury that couldn't disguise its purpose as a gilded cage. Anastasia lingered at the doorway, her expression unreadable. Why does he think I can help? Victoria asked. I know nothing about your world. That's precisely why, Anastasia replied, leaning against the doorframe. You're an outsider with insider blood. The Baronoffs might actually listen to you. And you don't think they will? Anastasia's laugh was brittle. The Baronoffs killed my mother when I was 12. Shot her while we were shopping for my birthday dress. Her fingers unconsciously touched a thin silver chain around her neck. They don't negotiate. They eliminate. The revelation hung between them, a shared trauma from different perspectives. I'm sorry about your mother, Victoria said softly. Save your sympathy, Anastasia snapped. You'll need it for yourself if you stay in our world. She turned to leave, then paused. There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you. Don't try to leave. The guards have orders. Am I a guest or a prisoner? Anastasia's smile didn't reach her eyes. In our family, is there really a difference? After she left, Victoria sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind racing. Through the window, she could see the lights of Moscow in the distance, the city oblivious to the power struggle that threatened to tear it apart. Somewhere out there was her apartment, her books, her students, her life, all suddenly as distant as another planet. She pulled her mother's photograph from her pocket, studying the familiar face for clues she might have missed. Had her mother known this day would come? Had she tried to prepare Victoria in subtle ways she hadn't recognized? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A maid entered with a tray of food and a bottle of vodka. The master thought you might need this, she said, setting down the tray. It's from his private stock. The vodka was clear as water in a crystal decanter, the food simple but elegant, black bread, smoked salmon, caviar. The food of oligarchs and criminals, not university professors. After the maid left, Victoria poured herself a glass with trembling hands. The first sip burned down her throat, warming her from the inside. By the third, her thoughts had begun to clarify. She was a linguist. She understood the power of words, the subtleties of communication, the ways meaning could be conveyed and concealed. Perhaps that was why Mikhail thought she could succeed where others had failed. Or perhaps he was simply using her as another pawn in a game she couldn't comprehend. A soft electronic chime drew her attention to a laptop on the desk that she hadn't noticed before. The screen glowed with an incoming video call from an unlisted number. Hesitantly, she accepted. The face that appeared was unfamiliar, a man in his 40s with a neatly trimmed beard and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Professor Petrova, he said, his voice cultured, educated. My name is Dmitry Baranov. I believe we have much to discuss about your newfound family. Victoria's blood froze in her veins. How did you find you? Baranov smiled thinly. The same way you found your father. Genetic databases are remarkably useful tools. He leaned closer to the camera. The question is, what will you do with this information? And more importantly, what will I do with it? The screen went black before she could respond, leaving her staring at her own reflection, a stranger's face looking back at her. Outside her door, she heard the subtle shift of movement, guards taking up their positions. Protecting her. Or ensuring she couldn't escape. Victoria drained her glass and poured another. Tomorrow, she would have to choose a side in a war she never knew existed. Tonight, she would mourn the life she had lost and prepare for the one being forced upon her. What would you do if you discovered your entire identity was built on secrets? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to find out what happens next in Victoria's extraordinary journey. Morning arrived with harsh clarity, sunlight streaming through windows that Victoria discovered were bulletproof when she tested them with a heavy crystal paperweight. The door to her suite opened to reveal a different guard than the night before, younger, with the disciplined posture of former military. Mr. Volkov requests your presence for breakfast, he said, his tone professional rather than threatening. The dining room was a study in understated wealth, antique furniture that had likely graced the homes of tsars, silverware that gleamed with the patina of age and quality. Mikhail sat at the head of the table, reading something on a tablet while sipping black coffee. He wore a casual sweater that probably cost more than Victoria's monthly salary, the sleeves pushed up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with faded tattoos, prison ink from another lifetime. Did you sleep well? He asked without looking up. I had a visitor last night, Victoria replied, taking a seat and pouring herself coffee from a silver samovar. Dmitry Baranov sends his regards. The tablet clattered to the table. For the first time, she saw genuine surprise on Mikhail's face. "Explain," he demanded, all pretense of casual conversation gone. "Video call on the laptop in my room. He knows who I am. He knows I'm here." She met his gaze steadily. "It seems your secret weapon isn't so secret after all." Mikhail's fist came down on the table, rattling the china. "Anton," he barked. The guard appeared instantly. "Sir?" "Find out who's been compromised. Check all communications, all staff. Now." As Anton hurried away, Anastasia entered, dressed in what appeared to be casual loungewear but was undoubtedly designer. She assessed the tension in the room with a single glance. "What's happened?" "The Baronoffs know about Victoria," Mikhail said, his voice tight with controlled rage. Anastasia's eyes narrowed as she turned to Victoria. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. He called me." "And you expect us to believe that?" Anastasia moved with startling speed, her hand closing around Victoria's throat. "What game are you playing?" "Enough." Mikhail's command cut through the room like a whip crack. "Release her, Nastia." Anastasia's fingers tightened momentarily before she let go, leaving Victoria gasping. "She could be working with them," Anastasia hissed. "This could all be an elaborate setup." "If I wanted to betray you," Victoria said hoarsely, rubbing her throat, "I wouldn't have told you about the call." Mikhail studied her, his eyes calculating. "She's right. This changes things, but not necessarily for the worse." He turned to Anastasia. "Accelerate the preparations. If they know about her, we need to move quickly." As Anastasia left, Mikhail refilled Victoria's coffee cup, the domestic gesture incongruous with the violence that had just erupted. "I apologize for my daughter's reaction," he said. "She's protective." "She's dangerous," Victoria corrected. Mikhail's smile was cold. "We all are, in our own ways. Even you, though you don't know it yet." "What did you mean about accelerating preparations?" "The original plan was to give you time to adjust, to understand your role. We no longer have that luxury." He leaned forward. "Today, you will meet with Dmitry Baronov as our representative." Victoria nearly choked on her coffee. "Today? I'm a linguistics professor, not a negotiator for the Russian Mafia." "Which is precisely why you're perfect for this role. You're educated, articulate, and most importantly, you have no history with the Baronoffs." His eyes softened slightly. "You also have your mother's integrity. They'll sense that. And if I refuse? Then Moscow burns." He said it simply, a statement of fact rather than a threat. "The Baronoffs will use you as leverage against me. They'll either kill you to hurt me or force you to act against us. Either way, the outcome is war." The weight of responsibility settled on Victoria's shoulders like a lead cloak. Thousands of lives hanging in the balance, dependent on her decisions. "What would I need to do?" "Listen to their demands. Make no commitments. Report back to me." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "I know this isn't fair to you, Victoria. But life rarely is." A bitter laugh escaped her. "That's quite the philosophical stance from a man who's built an empire on violence and fear." Instead of anger, his response was a look of something like respect. "You truly are your mother's daughter." He stood. "You have 3 hours to prepare. Anastasia will brief you on what you need to know." After he left, Victoria sat alone in the opulent dining room, the untouched breakfast growing cold before her. 3 hours to prepare for a meeting that could determine the fate of countless lives. 3 hours to decide who she was going to be in this new reality. The briefing with Anastasia was tense but surprisingly thorough. Despite her obvious distress, she provided Victoria with detailed information about the Baronoff family, their history, their businesses both legitimate and criminal, their key players. "Dmitry is the intellectual of the family," Anastasia explained, showing Victoria photographs on a secure tablet. Former professor of economics before he took over the family business when his older brother was killed. He's calculating, patient, and absolutely ruthless. What do they want? Territory. Control of the port operations we've dominated for decades. Access to our political connections. Anastasia's lip curled in disgust. They're nouveau riche trying to buy their way into power that should be earned. Says the woman who inherited her position, Victoria observed dryly. Anastasia's eyes flashed dangerously. I earned my place by surviving assassination attempts since I was 12. By learning every aspect of our business. By being stronger and smarter than anyone who challenged me. She leaned forward. What have you done besides hide in your books? The question stung because it contained a kernel of truth. Victoria had built a life of the mind, insulated from the harsh realities that had shaped Anastasia. I've lived honestly, she replied finally. Can you say the same? Something shifted in Anastasia's expression, not softening, exactly, but a flicker of recognition. Honesty is a luxury in our world. One you're about to lose. As the meeting time approached, Victoria was provided with clothes that were elegant but conservative, a charcoal gray suit that fit as if tailored for her, perhaps because it had been. The woman who helped her dress also provided a small earpiece. So we can communicate if necessary, Anastasia explained, demonstrating how it worked. But the meeting location will be swept for electronic surveillance, so we'll have limited contact. Where am I meeting him? The Pushkin Museum. Public enough to discourage violence, private enough for conversation. She handed Victoria a small pendant. Wear this. It contains a tracker, in case something goes wrong. You mean in case I try to run? Anastasia didn't deny it. That too. The car ride to the museum was silent, Victoria's mind racing through scenarios, trying to prepare for a situation no education could have equipped her for. The driver took a circuitous route, doubling back several times to ensure they weren't followed. As they pulled up to the museum's side entrance, Anastasia handed her a small envelope. From our father. Inside was a worn photograph Victoria had never seen before, a young Mikhail and her mother, Irina, standing before the very same museum, both smiling, his arm around her waist. On the back, in faded ink, the day we met, 1990. He said you should know that not everything began with violence, Anastasia said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. Some things began with love. Victoria tucked the photo into her pocket, next to the one she'd brought from her apartment. Two fragments of a history she was only beginning to understand. As she stepped from the car, Anastasia caught her wrist. Remember who you are today, she said. You're not just Professor Petrova anymore. You're Victoria Mikhailovna Volkova. Act like it. The museum's marble halls echoed with her footsteps as a security guard led her to a private viewing room in the Russian Impressionist wing. Waiting before a Levitan landscape was a man she recognized from the video call, Dmitry Baranov, the intellectual killer. Professor, he greeted her with a slight bow. Or should I say, Mississippi Volkova? Welcome to your heritage. Professor Petrova will do, Victoria replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The scent of old paintings and polished wood surrounded them, a civilized veneer over the deadly conversation to come. As you wish. Dmitry gestured to a bench position to view the Levitan landscape, a melancholy forest scene, sunlight filtering through birch trees. Your academic specialty is linguistics, yes? The evolution of Slavic languages? You've done your research. Knowledge is survival in our world. His smile didn't reach his eyes. A world you've suddenly found yourself thrust into. Not by choice. Few of us choose our circumstances, Professor. We merely adapt to them. He studied her face with unsettling intensity. You have his eyes. The same calculating intelligence. I wonder what else you've inherited from the wolf. Victoria felt the weight of the pendant against her skin, knowing Anastasia was likely listening to every word. I was told you wanted to meet. What do you want from me? Direct. Good. Dmitry nodded approvingly. What I want is simple, peace. Peace? Victoria couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. Your family just tried to assassinate my sister. Half-sister, he corrected. And yes, that unfortunate incident was a message, not an endgame. A demonstration of vulnerability. You killed an innocent woman. Something cold flickered in his eyes. There are no innocents in this conflict, Professor. Everyone who aligns with the Volkovs knows the risks. He leaned forward slightly. Including you now. The thread hung in the air between them, subtle but unmistakable. What kind of peace are you proposing? Victoria asked, forcing herself to maintain eye contact despite the chill running down her spine. A division of territories. Shared access to certain resources. A marriage alliance, perhaps. Marriage alliance? Victoria couldn't hide her surprise. This isn't medieval Europe. Dimitri's laugh was genuine this time. Our world operates on principles older than nations, Professor. Blood and family still matter more than laws and treaties. He gestured to the painting before them. Russia has always been thus. The veneer of civilization is thin. And where do I fit into this medieval vision? You're the unexpected variable. The scholar daughter, hidden away all these years. His gaze was calculating. Your existence suggests Mikhail Volkov has depths few have suspected. It makes me curious about what else he might value. The implication was clear, she was leverage, a weakness to be exploited. I've only just learned who my father is, Victoria said carefully. I'm hardly in a position to negotiate on his behalf. Yet here you are. Dimitri stood, moving to examine the painting more closely. Your father sent you because you're valuable to him. That alone tells me more than a dozen intelligence reports. Victoria felt exposed, a pawn being moved across a chessboard she couldn't fully see. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. A meeting. Neutral ground. The principal players from both families. He turned back to her. You would attend as Mikhail's newly acknowledged daughter. A symbol of new beginnings. And if he refuses? Dimitri's smile was thin. Then we return to the old ways. Blood for blood. He reached into his jacket, causing Victoria to tense, but withdrew only a business card. My private number. When you have his answer, call me directly. No intermediaries. As he handed her the card, his fingers brushed hers deliberately. You have until midnight. After that, the next body won't be a double. He left her sitting before the melancholy landscape, the weight of his words settling around her like a shroud. Only when she was certain he was gone did she allow her hands to tremble. Did you get all that? She whispered, knowing Anastasia was listening. Every word, came the reply in her earpiece. The car is waiting where it dropped you. Come out the west entrance. The return journey to the Volkov estate was tense, Anastasia silent beside her, typing rapidly on a secure phone. When they arrived, they were immediately escorted to what appeared to be a war room, a space dominated by a large table where Mikhail sat surrounded by lieutenants, maps and documents spread before them. All conversation ceased when Victoria entered. Mikhail dismissed his men with a gesture, leaving only the three of them. Well? He asked simply. Victoria recounted the conversation in detail, watching his expression darken at the mention of a marriage alliance. Predictable, he muttered. They've always wanted to merge our operations through marriage. First they suggested Anastasia should marry Dimitri's nephew, now this. He's testing us, Anastasia added. Using her to gauge how much you value her, how much leverage they might have. And the meeting? Mikhail asked. A trap, Anastasia said immediately. They'd never risk all their key players in one location unless they plan to eliminate ours. Perhaps, Mikhail agreed. Or perhaps they genuinely see an opportunity for resolution. He turned to Victoria. What do you think? The question surprised her. Me? I'm hardly qualified. You met him. You heard not just his words but how he said them. Your academic training makes you observant in ways different from our specialized education. His gaze was intent. What is your assessment? Victoria considered carefully. He was probing for weaknesses, yes. But there was something else, genuine curiosity. He seemed intrigued by my existence. As if it changed his understanding of you. Mikhail nodded slowly. And his offer of peace? Conditional. On his terms. But not entirely insincere. She hesitated. There's something personal in this conflict for him. Something beyond business. A shadow crossed Mikhail's face. Yes. There always has been. What aren't you telling me? Victoria asked. If I'm to help, I need to understand what's really at stake. Mikhail and Anastasia exchanged a glance, some silent communication passing between them. Show her, Mikhail said finally. Anastasia hesitated, then nodded. Follow me. She led Victoria deeper into the mansion, down a corridor she hadn't seen before, to a room that appeared to be a private study. Unlike the ostentatious display of wealth in the rest of the house, this space was intimate, personal. Family photographs lined the walls, Anastasia as a child, Mikhail with various dignitaries, and to Victoria's surprise, several of her mother. Anastasia went to a safe concealed behind a painting, a repin, Victoria noted absently, and removed a worn leather journal. This belonged to your mother, she said, handling it with unexpected reverence. She left it behind when she fled with you. Victoria took it with trembling hands. Why are you showing me this now? Because you need to understand why the Baronoffs will never truly accept peace. Anastasia's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. Read the last entry. The journal's pages were filled with her mother's familiar handwriting, the Cyrillic letters flowing across the yellowed paper. Victoria turned to the final entry, dated just days before her birth. Mikhail has promised to leave his world behind for us, for our child. But Baronoff knows. He's threatened to reveal everything unless Mikhail surrenders his territories. I can't let my child be born into this war. Tomorrow I will disappear. May God forgive me for separating father and child, but I see no other way. The Baronoffs will never stop hunting us otherwise. Victoria looked up, stunned. She didn't leave because she discovered who you were. She left because of the Baronoffs. Dmitri's father threatened her directly, Mikhail confirmed from the doorway, his voice heavy with old pain. She was carrying you. He said he would take you both if I didn't surrender everything I'd built. So she ran, Victoria whispered. To protect me. To protect you. And now history repeats itself, Mikhail said softly. The son threatens what the father could not obtain. The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. That's why you think I can help. Because I'm the living embodiment of what started this feud. You're the only one who can end it, Mikhail agreed. One way or another. As the implication sank in, Victoria's phone chimed with an incoming message. The screen displayed a text from an unknown number. Time is running out, Professor. But there's something your father hasn't told you, something that will change everything. Meet me alone at the National Library at 10 p.m. if you want the full truth about your mother's death. Victoria looked up to find both Mikhail and Anastasia watching her intently. Who was that? Anastasia demanded. Victoria hesitated, her finger hovering over the delete button. In that moment, she made a choice that would determine not just her future, but the fate of two criminal empires. No one important, she lied, slipping the phone into her pocket. Just a colleague from the university wondering where I'd been. I didn't know then that my simple lie would set in motion events that would leave Moscow streets running with blood. That by trying to discover the truth about my mother, I would uncover secrets that both families had killed to protect. Or that before the night was over, I would have to choose between the father I'd just found and the truth I'd spent my life pursuing. But as I stood there in that room filled with ghosts of a past I never knew, one thing became terrifyingly clear: I was no longer Professor Victoria Petrova. I was a Volkova now. And Volkovs make their own rules. If you want to discover what happens when Victoria meets her mysterious contact and learns the shocking truth about her mother's fate, hit that like button and subscribe now. The most dangerous secrets are always the ones kept within the family.